Good afternoon and welcome to the virtual development panel meeting of Allerdale Borough Council. My name is Lee and I'm the Democratic Services Officer, and for the purpose of this meeting, I'm also the host. I won't have any control of the meeting and the meeting will not begin until instructed by the Chair. The meeting is being live streamed on YouTube and a recording will be made available afterwards. Before we go into the meeting, we'll just do some introductions, starting with the members. Councillor Coburn.
Good afternoon, Councillor Nikki Coburn.
Councillor Granger.
Good afternoon, Councillor Malcolm Granger.
Councillor Heaslip.
Hello, Michael Heaslip.
Councillor Horsley.
Good afternoon, Daniel Horsley.
Councillor Kemp.
Good afternoon, Councillor George Kemp.
Councillor Markley.
Good afternoon, Councillor Tony Markley.
Councillor Semple.
Hello there, Councillor Andy Semple.
Councillor Scott.
Good afternoon, Councillor Paul Scott.
Councillor Smith.
Good afternoon, Councillor Alan Smith.
Councillor Tyson.
Good afternoon, Councillor Alan Tyson.
Thank you. And the officers, Simon Sharp.
Good afternoon, my name's Simon Sharp. I'm the Planning and Building Control Manager.
Lindsay Tomlinson.
Good afternoon, Lindsay Tomlinson, Deputy Monitoring Officer.
Thanks very much for your introductions. I'll now hand you over to the Chair to start the meeting. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. As previously stated, my name is Nikki Coburn and I'm Chair of the Development Panel for Allerdale Borough Council. You've been introduced to the members and officers in attendance today. The planning applications under consideration today will be decided by the members of the panel who are councillors, and we are supported by the officers in attendance. Moving on to the agenda. Item number 1, the minutes. To sign as a correct record the minutes of the meeting held on 25th of August 2020, 22nd of September 2020 and the 20th of October 2020.
I'll move the minutes.
Thank you. I will assume that all members are in agreement with the minutes unless you raise your hand. So if anyone raises their hand, I'll just have a look at the raised hand function. Can you indicate?
No raised hands, Chair.
Thank you. Lee, do we have any apologies for absence, please?
Yes, Chair. Just before I get on to that, Councillor Lynch has joined the meeting. Councillor Lynch, can you hear us and see us okay?
Yes, sorry about that.
Thank you. So apologies for absence, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Armstrong, who will be replaced today by Councillor Kemp. Councillor Daniels, who's replaced today by Councillor Markley. Councillor Fairbrother, who's replaced today by Councillor Heaslip. Councillor Kirkbride, who's replaced today by Councillor Scott. And Councillor Mumby. Thank you.
Okay. Agenda item number 3, declarations of interest. Please use the raised hand function if you wish to make a declaration, or if it becomes apparent during consideration of any of the applications that you may have an interest, please declare it at that point. Any declarations of interest? I don't see any. Do you, Lee? No.
No, Chair.
Thank you. Agenda item 4, do we have any questions?
No, Chair.
Thank you. Moving on to the first application, which is FUL/2020/0010, land adjacent to Heatherfields, Broughton Moor. It's a residential development of 66 dwellings and the associated infrastructure. I'll hand you over now to Simon Sharp.
Just before that, Chair, I can just confirm that the speakers are now on the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. So this first application this afternoon is for a major development of 66 dwellings. All 66 dwellings are 2 stories in height. As you can see from your papers, 18 are to be 4-bed, 43 are 3-bed, and 5 to be 2-bed. I will come on to the number of bedrooms in greater detail in a moment, because as you'll see, there are some implications with regard to the number of bedrooms and bedroom sizes. So of the 66 dwellings proposed, 13 are proposed to be affordable, meeting the definition of affordability in the National Planning Policy Framework. Of those 13, 7 are for low-cost ownership. That's obviously discounted on the market at a discounted percentage agreed with the council, and 6 are for affordable rent. So that is a rent that is again determined through a Section 106 agreement and fixed below the open market rent. So the 13 dwellings represent 20% of the 66 dwellings proposed. So you'll notice that the recommendation today, members, is not for you to determine the application, but rather delegate the responsibilities of granting planning permission subject to conditions to me. And that's because there is a Section 106 agreement that needs to be completed and signed, and that agreement is necessary to make the development acceptable. So it's a full application, so members are considering both the principle of development and also the details, so matters such as the design, layout, access arrangements, landscaping, for example. You'll note from the papers that in the development plan, in the Allerdale Local Plan Part 2, which obviously was adopted in July of this year, the site is identified as a housing commitment and is within Part 2's settlement limits, and more is a local service centre, so quite high up in the policy S3 of Part 1 local plans hierarchy for development. So the housing commitment status does derive from an outline planning permission that's now lapsed, but you'll see that the site is retained within the settlement limit. As you'll see from the weighting section of the report, full weight is being afforded, in the officer's opinion, to the development plan, parts 1 and part 2 of the local plan. There are no material considerations in officers' minds which would suggest that a decision is not made in accordance with the development plan. So the officer's advice to you today is that a decision should be made in accordance with the local plans part 1 and 2 when considered as a whole. You also see that officers consider that given the facilities and services and connectivity that brought more offers, that it is a sustainable location, and 66 dwellings proposed is commensurate in scale to the level of services and facilities that the village provides. You will note, members, though, from the report that there are a number of constraints identified either from our own constraints maps or through the investigations which the applicant took pre-submission of the application, and also from the consultee responses. So we consider as officers that the layout has responded appropriately to those constraints. But members, I also refer you to the suite of conditions at the foot of the officer's report. And I'll bring your attention to specific conditions. For example, condition 9, which requires further intrusive site investigation works to establish the exact situation with regard to coal mining legacy issues. You'll see from the coal authority's response and our own assessment as officers that we don't think the coal mining legacy is to the extent that it precludes planning permission being granted, but that conditions are necessary. The same balance arrives when you consider the main gas pipeline that traverses the site at its northern end, in condition 14 deals with that particular aspect. Again, not something that should actually halt development come forward. One of the issues that's particularly pertinent to this application is a matter of surface water drainage. And members, I'm sure you've already had an opportunity to read the County Council's comments as in their capacity as the lead local flood authority. You'll notice that the proposed drainage solution relies on on-site attenuation and then discharging at a controlled rate into a private watercourse. With infiltration not being possible on the site, then as you'll be aware from policy S29 and the surface water drainage hierarchy, then drainage to a watercourse at an attenuated rate is the next best method of dealing with surface water. And you'll see from paragraph 11.48 members of the officer's report, 11.48 details the officer's assessment of the matter. You'll note actually that the private watercourse is in the ownership of the Castles and Coasts Housing Association. It's actually in one of the gardens of one of their properties. And therefore, they are also the intended registered provider providing the affordable housing on the site. And they have provided agreement for the surface waters to discharge into that watercourse and then onwards onto the adopted system. Can I also refer members to paragraph 11.6 of the officer's report. There's an assessment there by officers with regard to the national homes standards. Now, I know it's something that we haven't discussed or considered in detail at panel before, but it is a material consideration. And it is, you know, it's inextricably linked to the overall assessment of sustainability under policy S2 of the local plan part 1. So you'll see from paragraph 11.6 of the report that there is note from officers that one of the 3-bed house types, the 301, is actually going to be offered as a 2-bed, not a 3-bed. And it's going to be offered as a 2-bed with additional storage to comply with the standards for homes to be made available through the registered provider for social rent. And there are also implications there with regard to the low-cost home types. Again, not all of them are compliant with the National Homes Standards. You'll also note, members, from the officer's report, particularly paragraph 11.7 of the report, that there is some conflict with policy SA5 of part 2 of the local plan. That's with regard to, members may recall that policy, it sets thresholds for when development needs to include enhanced accessibility housing. That's enhanced accessibility under the building regulations in this context. So there's enhanced accessibility of under part M42 of the building regulations, and then further enhancements under M43. And you'll note from paragraph 11.7 of the report that no M43 homes are being proposed as part of this development. Predominantly because they are more land hungry, because you need bigger spaces on the ground floor to be M43 compliant. So I think officers, as we accept there's a balance to be undertaken here, and you as members of the panel will need to afford weight to these issues. You'll see how officers have concluded that balance. Obviously, remind members that you need to consider each application against the development plan as a whole. So that means that you can find conflict with certain policies of the local plan. That's fine, and still come to the conclusion that as a whole, the development is acceptable because of its accordance with other policies in the local plan. And your weighting exercise, you're affording more weight to some of the areas of compliance with the local plan, as opposed to where there is conflict with policies of the local plan. So you'll see the officers' balancing exercise there. We've concluded that it's a viable, deliverable, sustainable development. Obviously has significant benefits of providing housing, including a number of affordable houses. I also think it's a very well laid out scheme with the appropriate amount of public open space, landscaping, parking arrangements, the drainage, etc. So in the round, against the development plan as a whole, there is some conflict, but not to the extent that we say that it shouldn't be supported, because it has significant merit as a scheme. If I may, Chair, I will now attempt just to go through the slides so members will get a better context of the site. Can members see the screen, please, the introductory slide?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Granger. So this is the site. North is actually, in this instance, to the left of the image. So the centre of Broughton Moor is down here. If you can see my cursor beyond the bottom right corner of the screen. So just for members to get their bearings, this is the road that goes towards Dereham. Here is the village playing field. To the right, just beyond the extent of this map, is where Broughton Moor Primary School is. And the road out eastwards towards the A594. And I say the central village crossroads, if you can think of Broughton Moor, is down here to the bottom right. So this is existing 20th century development heatherfields. There are some. There is an old railway line here that came in here, which is just some rough ground, and then here's the playing fields. And the land beyond is open countryside. You can see here that there is actually two sets of pylons that cross. That's the blue lines. The largest set just clipping the site, and the smaller pylons and wires going across the site. And then also this is the alignment of the gas pipeline that's referred to in the report. If you're on Dereham Road, you can see the markers in the hedge. This is an existing hedgerow on Dereham Road. We'll see it in the photographs in a minute. This on the eastern boundary is a hedge, typical field hedgerow, sort of hawthorn hedge. When I was on site, it has had the attention of a flail, but it's still about 6 foot 2 meters, just under 2 meters in height. This is a more open boundary, and there are clear signs of, shall we say, informal pedestrian ingress from the playing field into the site. I think it's used as a route for people to for informal recreation. The field itself is pasture, quite boggy, so there is lying water at this time of the year, and there is a general fall westwards towards a ditch and the boundary with heatherfields. Slide 2 typical elevations of one of the detached house types. So a gabled form, landscape windows, integral garage in this case. Typical floor plans. As you can see, what you'd expect from a volume house builder. This is the layout plan. So try and get the cursor to work. Remember to see the cursor. This is Dereham Road again. This is the existing development of Heatherfields. This is the playing field, the village playing field. And you can see a road access, a new vehicular access from Dereham Road and then sweeping through the development as a spine with just some branches away from it. And then there is, at the southern end, a pedestrian access proposed to link the development with the playing field. And you'll see from the officer's recommendation and what's to be secured in the Section 106 agreement is, and that's point B, the pedestrian access link and the upgrade of the adjacent play area. So that pedestrian access link will actually continue off-site across the playing field to link to the play area, and have the enhancement of that play area is also secured. There are actually quite a few items of equipment on that play area at the moment. There are 6 what I would call traditional items of play equipment, so things like the springy chicken, that sort of items. And then there are also some timber items as well in addition to that. So it's quite an extensive play equipment area, but there is secured from the volume of development being proposed here, further enhancements to that area and the connectivity to it. That connectivity then also, and we'll see it from the photographs, allows connectivity through to the school, which is just beyond the play area. So that's the layout plan, very similar to the landscaping plan previously. A 3-bed floor plan, again, integral garage, what you'd expect. Same exact house types, traditional gabled roofs, conservative and small C design here, gabled porches, casement windows. So here's the photograph. So we're now looking towards, going towards Dereham. So these are the pylons that I talked about. So the site is just on the right, just to the right of this hedge. So you'll see from the conditions and the county highways comments that this, the photographers standing in the 30-mile-an-hour limit is the national speed limit signs, and they would be extended to beyond the site entrance, the vehicular site entrance, which is further up towards the brow, just beyond the sign there. There is an existing field access nearby. So Heatherfields and the rest of Broughton Moor is behind the camera. And so that is the view. The camera's now swung around 180 degrees. Just the extreme limit of the site is here on the left. These are the first houses, existing houses in Broughton Moor. And you drop down to the bend, the road swings left and then heads southwards, eventually to the crossroads in the centre of the village. So now we're within the site, so we're still looking back towards Heatherfields. That's Heatherfields, you can see, with the rest of the village in the background beyond. So the site extends away leftwards from this photograph, southwards, This is the boundary hedge on Dereham Road. You can just pick up one of the pylons and also the wires, if you can see from my cursor, which actually cross the site. And there's the other wires. These are the larger pylon wires, and these are the smaller pylon wires crossing the site. And the gas pipeline enters the site just in this corner and then tracks across diagonally before exiting behind the camera on the eastern boundary where the hedge is. So that's the rear view of Heatherfields. These are the houses on Dereham Road. So this is going into the corner. So these are the Heatherfields houses, and these are the houses fronting onto Dereham Road. So this is the corner of the site here, which would be the northwest corner of the site. So these are the houses backing onto the site. So you can see they are post-war housing. This is the watercourse, which is not apparent on all of the photographs, but you can see there is this existing field drain, which is on the boundary of the site with Heatherfields. Members probably can pick up from the vegetation at where the water table is in the site and the bogginess. I can testify from my own experiences of walking across the site 3 times that you can always feel water across the site for large periods of time. So another view, now you're looking south with Heatherfields on the right hand side. Again, you can see the watercourse here, and this is the site extending eastwards away from that boundary. That is looking east towards the hawthorn hedge. So you can see the site as it rises up is drier towards that eastern boundary on the horizon of this photograph. So now we're looking back north towards those end houses on Dereham Road. There's the Dereham Road boundary hedge. And here's the houses backing on Heatherfields. And there's the 2 sets of pylons at the northern end of the site. It's the view west, so again, or northwest rather. So we're further south in the site. You can still see the houses on Dereham Road at the northern end. But now we're away from the Heatherfields housing, and this is the area which divides the site from the playing field, which is out of shot on the left-hand side. And there you can start picking up the goalposts of the playing field. And this is where there are points of, shall we say, informal ingress from the playing field into the site. This is the eastern boundary of the site. So this is the site here in the foreground. That's back on Dereham Road, excuse me, showing the visibility displays. You can see there's a verge there, an adopted verge. You can also see that the road gradients are relatively shallow and the road is dead straight. So there's a very good visibility afforded in both directions. And that's the view going towards the brow in the opposite direction. As you say, the speed limits will be moved. So we're now in the centre of the village. This is the school, if you're familiar with where Broadmoor Primary School is. So the central crossroads are out of shot to the left-hand side. And this is the cut through to the playing field. So this is just the gate to the playing field. And the site is actually in the distance here, you can actually pick up one of the pylons at the northern end of the site in the photograph. So the playing field is this green patch, then there's the boundary, and then you go into the site, and this is the linkage through. So with that linkage secured as point B in the officer's report and the recommendation, you'll have that safe walking route from the site across the playing field, coming out here onto the road and along the pavement and straight into the school. So that's looking west towards the village crossroads. As if you know that road coming in from the 594, there's the traffic calming in the vicinity of the school, and rather informal parking arrangements as well. So now we're at that gate, which I showed you in the earlier photograph, looking across the playing field. The existing play equipment is just around the corner. If you just at that litter bin, if you do a hard right, and it's on just outer shot to the right, and the site is in the background beyond the scrub there. And you can see the goal posts of the pitch and the playing field. There's 2 pitches. Bit difficult to tell, but you can see the facilities on the playing field. This is looking towards the avenue, the houses on the avenue in Broadmoor. So that's looking west from the site entrance to the school. Is just out of shot on the left hand side. So that concludes the slides, members. There's nothing on the late list. As you say, it's a comprehensive report. You'll see there is a plethora of conditions to deal with matters. And as we've concluded as officers, consider those conditions necessary, but with those conditions in place and with the Section 106 in place, that permission should be granted. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Simon. Lee, would you like to introduce the speaker?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the speaker, the agent from Gleeson Homes is David Wright. David, you'll have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair. So my name is David Wright and I'm Land Director for Gleeson Homes. I'm based up here in our Cumbria office located in Penrith. And perhaps 1 second. Sorry about that. So before I start, I'd just like to thank both Rebecca Wilson and Simon for their input into our proposal and dealing with our plan application in a professional manner. For those who I haven't met before or spoke to on behalf of Gleeson's, we specialise in provision of low-cost for sale housing, and we're giving customers at the lower end of the housing market a chance to buy their own home. So we're currently developing 71 sites across the north of England. Could you just go on to the next slide, please? Okay. So if we're successful in getting planning permission today, then this would be our second site in West Cumbria and our first site in Allerdale itself. We're looking to build 66 homes at Broughton Moor that are primarily aimed at first-time buyers, key workers and young families. And we're not just looking to build homes, as Simon just mentioned, we're also looking to provide a safe and attractive footpath link to the local school and related to those works, improve the existing play area to the south of the site. And also, again, Simon's alluded to, but carry out extensive remediation work to the site due to its historical coal mining past. Just go to the next slide, please. So just a brief overview of the planning history, which Simon's mentioned. So a strategic land company gained outline plan permission for up to 64 homes in 2016, but this permission subsequently elapsed in 2019. So at the beginning of this year, we submitted a planning application and it's going to be for a similar size development of 66 homes. Next slide, please. So you'll be familiar with this layout after Simon just showed you, but it's a good overview of the key design features on the site. So you mentioned the footpath link that would be on that top right corner if you're looking on the screen there. There's a large green space at the front of the site. This is where the gas pipeline and the pylons run across the site, so houses obviously would not be built in this area. So what we're looking to do is provide an attractive landscape feature. So as you enter the site, and also it encourages biodiversity through the newly planted wildflower meadows, and we're going to retain the existing hedgerows and provide further hedgerows into the site itself. And again, just towards the bottom of the site there, you can see the area. It's going to be a ground attenuation basin. So this provides further enhancements to the biodiversity of the site. It also provides capacity for surface water drainage to deal with, the worst possible storms that we could encounter up here in Cumbria over the next 100 years. And that would take into account climate change and also 40% capacity on top of that. And you'll also know all of our properties are either semi-detached or detached. And this allows us to provide generous gardens to the front and back of each plot. It also allows all homes to have off-street parking, which we know is a premium in Cumbria, and particularly in Allerdale itself. Next slide, please. So this slide, it just shows that planned off-site footpath that Simon mentioned before. And this will be delivered through a 106 legal agreement. So you've seen the photos of the playing field itself, and also this time of year, a lot like the site itself, the ground can be boggy at best. So the footpath will provide a link from our development to the heart of the village. It also improve the use and enhance the actual playing field itself by having a footpath that allows it to be used throughout the year and just enhances the community asset itself. Next slide, please. So there's a mention of the coal mining past. So this map's from 1867, as you can see. And there was a shaft that's located on the site that was already abandoned at that date. And then there's another one nearby. So we've carried out extensive investigations of the site, both before the application and during the application process. There's a hint of it there on some of the photographs where vehicles had been. And this ensures the site's stability and also people's health and well-being for generations to come. So before a single spade is dug on this development, we'll require approval from the coal board on a mitigation remediation strategy in accordance with that planning condition that was mentioned earlier. Next slide, please. So this just gives you a feel about who we are in terms of low-cost house builders. So our 2-bedroom house with the being discounted, they would be available to people in the local area only at £93,000. This equates to a mortgage repayment of approximately £58 a week. So a local first-time buyer that has received garden space at the front and the back, that have the off-street parking, energy efficiency of EPC rating of at least A, from how we've been operating in Cumbria. And you can see from on that slide how that compares with the local rental market. And I believe personally, this is in essence why 85% of the buyers across the country and also in Cumbria are first-time buyers. If they're not first-time buyers, sometimes it might be people looking to start a family. It might be key workers in the area looking for an affordable home that's easy to run and look after. We don't just build and sell homes. We also look to sponsor local junior sports teams. We commit to employ as many people locally as possible. We provide free of charge alterations to disabled occupants with an identified need. We employ as many apprentices as possible. We do not sell to landlords. So you're not going to have people buying these to rent out to other people. We want them to be owned by people who actually need them. And we never land bank as well. So as soon as we've managed to get planning permission to purchase the site, we look to make a start. And on this site, once we've got some of the conditions and requirements out the way, we'll be looking to make a start probably in the springtime in the new year.
Thank you,
The
Mr.
economic benefits of the
5
scheme.
minutes.
It's
Mr. Wright,
5
your
point.
5 minutes is up.
Just to summarise, we hope in these difficult times, all members of support scheme that aim as many first-time buyers as possible to buy their own home in the local area.
Right, members, do we have questions for Mr. Wright? Councillor Kemp.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'd just like to ask the Gleeson representative about the pedestrian access from the Durham Road side of the development. You know, this is a very, very quick road. I know the area very well. And I'm just a bit worried about the pedestrians moving from the Durham Road side. And I think also the pedestrian access to the school is critical for this development to go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, it's a good question. And there's 2 elements to that. So the first part of the question, in terms of access from Durham Road itself, The County Council, in their consultation response, they've recommended we enter into a 278 agreement, which would enable a footpath connection to be provided along Dereham Road. So from that access point where we'd also provide an access for cars, you'd also allow people to walk along there. But the key part of it as well, which you've also alluded to, is the footpath going directly through the playing fields to the south to the school. That's obviously the quickest way into the rest of the village, into the heart of the village. It's the most safest way, and arguably it's the most attractive way as well. So you're not having to sort of walk on the side of the road. So there's two elements there, but we feel that on both sides we've got that covered. So we'd look to provide a footpath onto Dereham Road itself, but we'd be encouraging all our buyers to be using the footpath through the playing fields.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Granger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Wright, your attenuation system, is it going to be worked on a pipe system or on a tank system, please?
Thank you, Councillor. The attenuation system, so it's a basin, so effectively it would be in the area of the falls that Simon showed where there was an existing kind of a collection of water. That area would be hollowed out to some extent, and rather than use too much of the attenuated pipes or large pipes, we want to have as much as possible of the attenuation to be used above ground. There's an element of a couple of crates that would be underneath the road itself, but it's a mixture of the two, so it's predominantly going to be using the basin itself.
Thank you.
Councillor Lynch.
Thank you. I'm very much interested in the low-cost home ownership aspect. If possible, could we have up the last slide that we were looking at about the costs? Because I think this is a very important aspect of this development. Because cheaper home ownership, particularly for young people and couples just starting off, I think is very important. The figures that you've got there, the £69 a week for a 3-bed semi, is that on from a mortgage point of view, roughly how much that would cost you having got a mortgage for the property? Is that what your figures are on there?
It is, Councillor, yes. So what we work out is using the houses that be on the open market, using Help to Buy and having a mortgage at the current mortgage rates available to them. That's the approximate price of what they'll be paying a week based on the overall value of the properties.
And that mortgage would be over how many years? 25, 30?
I think it's usually 25 years where we project the cost.
You base that on 25 years. And what about the rental properties?
So the properties that we'd be providing through the Housing Association for rental, we wouldn't have the figures ourselves, but they'd be covered under a Section 106 legal agreement to make sure that they were available to people in affordable need. There's mention of Castle and Coast Housing Association, so we've had an agreement in principle with them where they could look to provide properties for affordable rent, and that would be obviously below what you've seen there in terms of what's on the open market and the rental market, but it would be something that would have to be agreed with the Allerdale Council itself and the housing team.
And can I just confirm, you said you would not be selling these to sort of for buy-to-let landlords? You don't. That's something the company doesn't do.
Yeah, that's right. We put a covenant on the properties, ensuring that they're not there. And the idea and the philosophy behind that is because they are, we believe are really affordable and really attractive. We often have people queuing up to buy their first home. The last thing we'd want to do is have people taking advantage of that to sell them on to people. And in this part of the world, in West Cumbria, you'll often get people selling affordable accommodation for either tourist reasons, or it might even be for contractors who work at Sellafield or elsewhere in West Cumbria. So that's our philosophy behind that.
Yeah. So there is a covenant on the homes to that degree.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. Next. Oops. Next, I've got Councillor Tyson.
Good afternoon, Mr. Wright.
I was present at your previous presentation too on a few weeks ago. I'm glad to see the prices up again. My concerns several weeks ago were about climate change, and I want to raise the subject again today. We know that there has been quite a lot in the press at the moment, but and it is still generally expected that we will meet the targets nationally of the Paris thing of 2.1 of over 2%. That's the absolute maximum that Paris set by 2030, and it's 2021 now, and these houses are going to be there for probably 40, 50, 60 years. Now, you mentioned, I think, a price of about 5K for putting the right sort of stuff in that brings us up to the standards, I think, that are in our local plan at the present time. But looking from the officer's text, it seems that there have been no progress on this with regard to this development. So I've seen the prices. Elaine has said about the 25-year, 30-year mortgage you mentioned. Fine, you've given the prices per week, but over a 25-year mortgage, facing the fact that all these modifications will have to be done probably in the next 10 years, it doesn't stack up that you're building houses that don't meet our regulations. Have you anything to say on that?
That's a really good question, that, Councillor, which I didn't have time to address in the 5 minutes, as you say. I overrun a little bit. So what's been planned and what we mentioned last time when we were discussing another site that's coming forward in the new year in Allerdale was the government is looking to increase the regulations and through the building control in terms of the requirement of all houses across the country. And that covers many aspects. It could include, for example, solar photovoltaics. It could be in how we provide energy to our homes. So gas boilers, we've probably all heard that they're on the way out in the next 2 or 3 years. And the actual date when these builder regulations come in, it keeps getting set back. And it's understandable because everything that's going on in the world, particularly over the last 12 months, so be it Brexit or COVID-19 or whatever happens, it seems to keep pushing back 6 months. But it is on the agenda, and the government's intention is that new builders such as ourselves, we have a big part to play in ensuring that we future-proof and bring down those emissions across the country. There's then, as you also alluded to, it then falls back to what they can do with the existing housing stock that's there, be it houses that have been built quite recently or not. It's a bit difficult to sort of predict when these changes will come in. We know they're coming in. Our prices are based on the fact they're going to be coming in. It's something that's not unfortunately covered through the planning process at the moment. It's through building control. But yeah, without doubt, it's something that we completely support ourselves. And it's also a reason why we've got to be very careful when we're looking at sites to make sure that we prepare for what's going to come forward in probably at least the next 12 months, but it can't be any further than that. It'll be some point in the next 12 months we think these changes will come in.
Yes, thank you. Can I ask a supplementary question?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, okay. The country was told in 2008 that by 2016, all our housing stock, old, existing and new build, was going to be compatible with climate change standing. So it's still, they're out of date now, you know, on that basis. And I don't see why you need to wait to be told to do things. If we're talking about 5K or 10K difference in a price over 25 to 30 years.
Councillor Tyson, this is, I totally appreciate what you're saying, but I don't actually think this is a question for the developer, because the developers are not going to comply really, unless it's within the building regulations.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have anything to say, Mr. Wright? But I think I've summed it up there.
Yeah, I think you have to, and I don't want to sound cynical or anything like that, but it is true to a certain extent. And what we have prepared for is we're ready for all the changes that are going to happen through the building control system and the building regulations when they're there. But we'd also like to emphasise those houses that we're looking to build and what are there right now. Let's say that there's no changes and the government just takes off the agenda for the next 10 years. They are very energy efficient homes. That's down for two reasons. We want to be as sustainable as possible. We were voted the most sustainable PLC 2 or 3 years ago. On top of that as well, our homes in Cumbria, every single house has had an EPC rating of A or above. I myself just bought a house 2 or 3 days ago that was 30 years old. It had an EPC rating of D. Things have changed quite a lot. So the new houses that are getting built right now are very energy efficient, and things are only going to get better over the next few years.
Yeah, thank you. I've got Councillor Semple next, please.
Thanks, Chair. Hi, David. Like Councillor Tyson, I remember you speaking previously, and you know, affordable housing, totally committed to that and support you on that. My question to you, and it might be a question that I might ask to Simon later on, is about the safe access to the development. I mean, I know, you know, I mean, coming from Cockermouth, which is where I live, I mean, I recently travelled to go to Seaton, just yesterday, in fact, and it's a tortuous, twisty, unsafe road to get to Broughton Moor, okay? And I presume that the people who you're going to buy your houses are going to be commuters, because there's no work in Broughton Moor. So I suppose the question really is, do you consider the sort of wider, I mean, are you going to speak to other statutory agencies that road needs to be improved dramatically?
Thank you, Councillor. There's it depends on your perspective sometimes and where you're coming from. So you mentioned you're travelling from Cockermouth. I suppose if you travelled from Dereham to Broughton Moor and then came from the Cockermouth Road from Dereham along there, that's a pretty safe and straight road. But you're right, there is a road off the A66 that kind of meanders from the up towards Broughton Moor itself, and that road itself, you've got to be from the local area, you've got to know when to stop when you start. But then from another perspective, if you're coming from Workington, let's say, and you're driving through Seaton, then again, that road's not as bad as it would be if you're coming from the A66. What we do is we do listen to everything that we get told from Cumbria Highways in terms of what's required and make sure it's safe. I suspect if we were looking at I say a major development, but a really big development, let's say 200 houses or something like that, I suspect in those circumstances, they'd be insisting that further money was given to them that could be pooled and resourced to enable those road improvements that are required long term. But on a development of our size, they're happy with what we provided, so long as we move the 30-mile-an-hour zone further out, because it's quite a straight road where we come into the site, and you know, and we've agreed to that, and we'll look to get that secured through the legal agreement.
Thank you.
Right, next I've got Councillor Granger again.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Wright, David, if you look on page 3 of our agenda, it's rather a robust group of conditions, agreements. Your affordable housing, your provision of pedestrian access, maintains of on-site landscaping. Okay, are you at this present day willing to say you'll sign up for that and not go away, then come back in 6 months' time and ask for an amendment on it? Are you willing to sign those agreements?
Good question, Councillor. Yeah, I mean, in general, we always, and I think in this instance, we had an email from the planning office to make sure we were happy with those pre-commencement planning conditions and the other conditions that have been submitted. They are very robust. You're right to say that, and I think that just reflects there's a number of constraints on site, not least the coal mining historically, the drainage and everything else. And yeah, we agree to all them in principle. There's no plans or reasons why we wouldn't want to agree to those conditions. Make sure things are done in accordance with the planning permission as they're recommended. It does mean time, and to an element, there's certain things that we won't know the price of until we get going on it. But yeah, absolutely, we would look to comply with all those conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Can I have a follow-on, Madam Chair?
A very quick one.
Well, at this point, if they're willing to sign all that and all the T's have been crossed and I's dotted, I'd recommend approval, granting permission to subject to all the conditions on page 3 of the agenda number 5.
Right. Lindsay, do I have to accept that because we haven't finished all the questions to the, we haven't done any questions to the officer yet?
Yes, absolutely. I would recommend that you wait until the questions finish, although you are perfectly all right to put forward a motion. It's really up to you whether you wish to at this point.
But this is the officer's just going to recommend what they say. He's recommending what he says, and his company's willing to do. So I'm going for planning to agree with it.
Councillor Granger, I think I'll just park that to one side at the moment because members haven't finished asking questions yet. We haven't had debate. So I'm just going to park it. Is that all right, Lindsay?
You will need to come back though, Chair, just to check that there's a seconder to that motion that's being put on the
table. But I'm not going to ask for one now because members haven't heard everything, in my opinion. Thank you. Councillor Kemp.
Thanks, Chair. Mr. Wright, really, the site of the development, it may seem to be a great site, really poor drained land as such, and it may be said to be a benefit to the village to build on sort of poor land like this. But poor land like this, as a rule, we have seen developments in nearby villages where we've built on semi-wetland, as I would call it, that have been disastrous to the local flooding. What does he feel about this natural sponge being removed? Because Broughton Moor is surrounded by wet ground like this, and I would hate the development to increase the chance of flooding downstream, wherever it may be, because in Flimby, where we've done a development, Farmers Way, a couple of years after it built on a semi-wetland, Flimby was under 2 foot of water. So I think we've got to be careful. What's his feelings on this, please? Thank you.
That's a good question, Councillor. I know the site you're talking about in Flimby as well. I'm aware of that site and where it's at. I'm also aware of the flood alleviation scheme that's going to be coming forward, hopefully with the Environment Agency in Flimby. We work really closely with the lead local flood authority, the Cumbria County Council, and also with the Environment Agency themselves on a number of sites we'll look to bring forward in Cumbria. We've got an office up here in Cumbria. We know that, rightly so, it's a lot more stringent these days in terms of getting planning permission and getting conditions signed off in Cumbria with things that we've suffered in the past, such as Storm Desmond and everything else. And what we notice as a business, because we operate throughout the North England and Midlands, it's the most robust process in Cumbria than anywhere else where we operate, and that's partly because the Cumbria County Council and that they work as lead local flood authority, also United Utilities, who cover the wider northwest region as well. So we mentioned about conditions before. There's a condition to make sure that everything we do is signed off. So when we have a public sewers that would be maintained and adopted by United Utilities in the future, they have the final say to make sure that the drainage strategy and scheme works to perfection, to be honest. So although it's quite a robust sort of process, it's something that we're not going into naively or anything like that. We know it's quite robust and rightly so. So we are really confident that we won't be doing anything that will cause any harm to people downstream, particularly in areas like Flimby, which are just a couple of miles away.
Thank you. It's Councillor Markley next, but meanwhile, Councillor Tyson, do you think you could mute your mic, please? We keep hearing you turning your papers over. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I thank you, officers, and thank you, Mr. Wright, for a very informative presentation. I actually welcome developments of this and this sort, and I'm going to ask a question to yourself, sir. Do you think the market is buoyant at the moment and you have plenty of customers to buy these houses? And after you've answered that question, I will then formally second Councillor Granger's recommendation to approve this and move progress on this debate. Thank you.
I haven't asked my questions yet, so if you could.
Well, I've seconded it now, Chairman.
Okay.
In terms of the question from the councillors, thank you for that, councillor. Yeah, in terms of the housing market, right across the country, our business and others, it's very buoyant at the moment. But to some extent, that may be a bubble. So when the housing market was effectively shut down by the government through the beginning of the COVID-19 process, when everything reopened again come June, July time, it's been really, really busy, and it's been no different with ourselves, not just in Cumbria, but throughout our business itself. But the Help to Buy, which a lot of developers rely on, comes to an end come April time, I think. And also at the moment, some of the higher end properties are benefiting from a stamp duty land tax holiday effectively by higher threshold. From our perspective, we are catering for first time buyers predominantly and our key workers that have been fundamental throughout the pandemic. So we think we're in a very good place that even when these types of market manipulation comes to an end in terms of stamp duty land tax, for example, we'll still have a lot of people that we're always going to be people that want to move out of the parents' homes, move out of the rental trap, as it's called, and be able to buy their own first home. In Cumbria specifically, we've got sites in Carlisle, we've got one site in Barrow, another site in West Cumbria and Egremont, and they've all been sort of experiencing really strong sales throughout, and they're all different areas. But to give one example, the site in Barrow, we cannot build houses quick enough to sell them. It's really, really popular, and it was an area of regeneration. In Broughton Moor itself, I think there was a question mentioned before about it's going to be mainly commuters. I think that will be true to some extent. Broughton Moor is always going to be relying on people perhaps working in Maryport, Workington, Cockermouth, down the coast in Sellafield, maybe even up towards Carlisle or what have you. But what is clear today is over the last 12 months, things have changed fundamentally in how people work. So there's no reason anymore why someone can't live in Broughton Moor, be on Zoom or Microsoft Teams or what have you, and work for a company anywhere in the world, never mind anywhere in the UK. I mean, I'm in the office today only because I've just moved house and my kids can't be trusted when I'm on a planning committee meeting. But the majority of planning committees, and like the last one I did when I spoke to you guys, was done from my house in West Cumbria, and that changes the market. And in my opinion, it makes Cumbria one of the most attractive places to live in the world, never mind in the UK. You've got affordable housing, you've got the Lake District on your doorstep. So we're really excited about our future in Cumbria, to be honest.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Yeah, my question, in light of what you've just said, and I understand the constraints, etc., I am really disappointed that you don't meet the technical housing standards from the DCLG in a lot of your houses. So, as I said, I'm very conflicted because I recognise the constraints and see that you've got an awful lot to do, but not meeting the DCLG standards is, as I said, very disappointed. So I am conflicted here. What would you like to say?
Yeah, I think we touched on that when we had a discussion about this in Workington. And what it is, and the standards that you're referring to for the other members as well, it's about the space standards that are required nationally. And when I say they're required, it is a guidance. So each local planning authority can choose to adopt those requirements as effectively part of the local plan. So in Allerdale, there is no specific requirement in the local plan to provide space standard house types. Now, what space standard house types requires, it's based on how many people live in a property rather than how many bedrooms. And it ensures two things: that there's enough storage space for people living in these properties, and also ensures enough space for the people in those properties. But what it does do, it effectively dictates how someone looks after a home and how they use them. So I'll give you a specific example. In our 2-bedroom properties, the ones we're looking to get people on the housing ladder for, the square footage is 650 square feet roughly. And under the housing standards, they would want them to be 750 square feet approximately. Now, what that would do if we decided to go with those standards, which are something that we isn't something that's written into the local plan at the moment, it effectively freezes out those people. So when there's a slide before where it says you could have a property for £58 a week, effectively a mortgage, you would not be able to build that and be able to have a sustainable company that would then be able to sell them on to people. So all it does, it effectively removes people who really need to get on the housing ladder from getting a property. And if you think about a 2-bedroom property, my first house was a 2-bedroom cottage, like an old miner's cottage effectively. And it was probably about the same size, probably a little bit smaller actually than a 650 square foot property. But it was right for me because it was just me and my partner. And at the time, we didn't have any kids, we didn't have a dog, we didn't have anything. And it allowed us to get on the housing ladder and then move up slowly to get houses that are more suitable for families and everything else that are there. So we do recognise there's a need for space standard properties, and we do provide them. So on this scheme, I think 39% of the properties are space standard compliant, but then 61% of them aren't. But that just shows that we are looking for those people to get on the housing ladder predominantly. We're not looking to support people who already own a house and want that additional space for the kids, for the dogs, for the extended family being there. We are in a balance, and like you've mentioned there as well, the site itself isn't straightforward. There's a number of constraints, and I would be honest, if I was in the meeting and the question got put to me before, would you be able to satisfy all these conditions and bring a site forward where every property was space standard compliant? I think the answer would be no. We just wouldn't be able to make that work. It just wouldn't be viable, and it would probably alter the market we were looking to go for as well. We really want first-time buyers buying these properties. We don't want them to be going to people that already have the benefit of owning their own property.
Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying, but as long as you get the message that we are looking for homes that comply with policy S4. Right. Any more questions, anybody? No. Councillor Smith, were you here for the whole presentation?
Yeah, he's just confirmed he was, Chair.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I just saw him coming back in.
Yeah, we had just a slight delay with his. Yeah, it says reconnect, but yeah, he's seen all the presentation.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. I just
Thank
wanted to make sure that we were fully compliant with everything.
Yeah.
Okay, debate. Would anybody like to start the debate?
Sorry, Chair, I didn't know whether there's any questions to officers first.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, my fault. My fault. I forgot the questions to the officers. Apologies. Okay, then. Councillor Semple.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I just there's an awful lot of information here, isn't there? And I just wanted to check with Simon. I think you said at the beginning. So what we're actually doing is passing that whole long list of recommendations and information and over to you. Yeah, that's what we're doing at this stage. Is that right? I mean, you know, we're putting things in your hands. Yeah.
Yeah, so normally, thank you, Councillor Semple. So normally there would be a recommendation to grant permission subject to conditions. So when there is a section 106 involved, in a minority of cases, we can actually get that section 106 signed and sealed and sorted prior to the panel, but that is in a minority of cases. So it's normal practice and reasonable that there's a heads of terms agreed with the applicant, and in this case, those heads of terms have been agreed. So the applicant has agreed to those provisions A to E that you see in the recommendation. And so what would happen now, because a planning permission cannot be legally granted until the Section 106 agreement is completed and signed, is that members, if you are content with the development in terms of you are okay with it being granted planning permission, subject to those conditions listed in the report and the securing of the Section 106 agreement, your resolution would be to delegate the responsibility of granting planning permission to me, with the caveat that the Section 106 agreement is signed and secures A to E, and also it's granted subject to those conditions as listed in the report. Now, if the developer, if the applicant does not sign up to those conditions, the Section 106 agreement and the A to E, then we will bring this matter back to panel for consideration. And it may be that the officer's recommendation actually changes, because what we're saying at the moment is that this development is only acceptable subject to the conditions and also subject to the obligations A to E in the Section 106. So if the applicant's not willing to sign up to A to E, then my opinion at this juncture would be that the development's not acceptable, because you need those obligations to secure the acceptability of the application. But as I say, at the moment, the heads of terms are agreed with the applicant. They have agreed to A to E. And so there's no reason, I can advise members, there's no reason to suggest that they're going to renege on that and then not sign up to the Section 106 agreement. So that's what the recommendation is. Sorry, it's a very long-winded answer, Councillor Semple. Just if I may, Chair, just another couple of points, just to clarify some matters which I think Councillor Lynch raised, and I think also Councillor Semple yourself. First, just with regard to the housing and the affordable housing, sometimes I know developers and applicants will talk about affordability, if you like, with a small a, so houses that happen to be affordable in their eyes on the open market. You'll see, though, under A of this 106, that we are actually securing affordable housing with a capital A, if you like. That's affordable housing that meets the definition of affordability in the National Planning Policy Framework. So that is, so the low cost housing, the discounted housing that goes onto the market, that the discounted cost of that housing is actually agreed with us as Allerdale Borough Council. So our housing manager, Andrea Smith, she's actually, there are zones, there are per parish, there is an agreed percentage discount from the open market value that is considered to be an affordable value to buy that house at to meet the criteria of affordability. So that is what the 7 low-cost home ownership houses are, and then the 6 affordable rent houses. So that's houses that would affect a registered provider would take up at the stage it's intended that be castles and coasts, and they would then rent those houses at an affordable rent, so a rent that's agreed to be affordable to tenants. In addition to that, then there'll be houses which are sold on the open market at a price that the applicant, the developer, thinks is affordable. That's affordable with small a. Just on the point in terms of the road and infrastructure impact, obviously, I think as the applicant alluded to, we would suspect that there will be a proportion of people, even if there wasn't the pandemic, continuing to do work at home. We do think that there will be people that will be commuting into Workington and perhaps down to Sellafield. We have asked the specific question of the Highways Authority about the cumulative impact of this development and other committed and consented schemes, including the allocation at the allocations en route and developments consented en route to those centres. I won't open up the can of worms that is Broughton Moor Dump and the old RNAD site, But needless to say, this development does not, apart from the immediate environs of the site access, trigger any necessity for highways improvements on the roads to those larger centres. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And Councillor Tyson, do you have a quick question?
Yes, certainly. Simon, para 11.8, really the bottom part of this para, where you discuss the M4 problems, and you say at one stage the council will take a flexible approach to these requirements where the applicant can demonstrate that it would significantly harm financial viability. The applicant has made a case but has not provided detailed viability reports to evidence this. I'm looking at it and thinking that over a 25-year mortgage, the sort of indications that Mr. Wright gave us last time, it's peanuts, to be quite honest, for what these young people buying these houses will have to pay in modifications, perhaps in the next 5 or 10 years. So I'm still concerned that what I would like to propose, Chairman, is an amendment that we defer this such that this matter, this non-compliance with M43, can be discussed further.
Could I bring Lindsay in here, because that's it's different from the motion. It's totally different from the motion, isn't it?
It is. It is Dave for the motion. So we have a motion on the table, and that has been seconded. So it's motion by Councillor Granger, seconded by Councillor Markley. So the course of action would be to debate that motion, take a vote on it. If Councillor Tyson's motion is seconded, you then move to debate on that if that first motion fails.
Thank you. Thought that was the case. Councillor Kemp.
Oh, sorry, Chair. Before Councillor Kemp comes in, forgive me, Councillor Kemp. Just as a point for Councillor Tyson, response to Councillor Tyson's comments, and just be helpful. You know, there is no doubt in officers' minds that there is conflict with policy SA5 of Part 2 of the local plan. Hopefully, I made that quite clear in the introduction, and also the officers made it very clear in the report. There is no formal viability assessment. We haven't had a viability assessment, but as I've said in the introduction, as detailed in the officer's report, we know there are significant constraints with the site, including the coal mining legacy, including the drainage. So we know, and I can categorically say to members that there are abnormal costs associated with the site. We know this. We also know that Broughton Moor, in terms of values of houses, they're okay, but we're not talking cockermouth levels of revenues for the developer. So it's clearly the officer's opinion that we didn't feel a viability assessment is required in this instance. And although there is conflict with policy SA5, there is, as I said in my introduction, accordance with a plethora of local plan policies, and considered against the development plan as a whole, we consider that there is only limited weight to be afforded to the conflict with policy SA5, and there is significant weight derived from the benefits of providing the housing and the accordance with the other local plan policies. But it is something, you know, that is an officer view, and members are very entitled to come to a different balancing and weighing exercise if they should do so.
Thank you, Simon. Councillor Kemp.
Thanks, Chair. Simon, I would just really like a couple of things, really. As we all know, Broughton Moor is a fairly isolated village with very poor public transport to the village. The local amenities are also very, very poor. So what I would really like to ask them is, we've got a school, a primary school in Broadmoor that currently has about 60 pupils. Now, this development of 66 properties, which I think it's great that they're going to get the youngsters on the property ladder. I think it's brilliant. But what impact does he think that these 66 houses will have on such a small school like Broadmoor, which only in this current moment is about 60 pupils? So it could possibly double the size of this school. Also, we've got Dereham, a couple of miles down the road, which is suffering drastically from the major developments that's happened in Dereham. It's nearly at breaking point. So, has this been really looked at deeply? Because I think it could end up being a really severe problem with how the primary school at Broadmoor would actually cope. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Yeah, no, it's a valid question. It's clearly a material planning consideration, and it's covered in policy S2 of the local plan and policy S3. So under policy S3, as detailed in the officer's report, Broadmoor has been identified as a local service centre. So obviously that was in 2014. So you're entitled to say, is that policy, is that hierarchy correct? So you look at Broadmoor's services. They are limited compared with, say Seaton or Maryport, but it still, in Allerdale terms, provides the services of a local service centre, and that's why it's identified as such. And we consider that still to be robust. With regard to the impact on school, it is raised, as members will see in paragraph 5.1, by the parish council as a consideration for reflecting Councillor Kent's question. So the county council asked that specific question, as they are on all major housing developments, about the impact on infrastructure, including schools. Now, they consider, as the statutory consultee, that there is no impact that would necessitate an infrastructure contribution coming arising from this development for schools. I clearly can see the comment being made by the parish council, but I can only report back that that's the county council's opinion with regard to the capacity of schools in the area. So, and specifically with regard to Broadmoor Primary School. In the absence of anything from the county council, I'd strongly advise members to steer away from saying there is an impact on infrastructure, and because there isn't the evidence from the county council to suggest that. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, we'll go to the vote now, and the motion was put forward by Councillor Granger, seconded by Councillor Markley, and that was to delegate the granting of the planning permission to the building control manager upon the completion and signing of the Section 106 agreement.
Yeah, can I just come in?
Yep.
You haven't actually had the debate yet on that motion, so if you want to open that up for debate now. You just had the questions to officers after the questions.
Okay, yep, thank you. Sorry, I thought we'd gone through. Okay, Councillor Markley.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, well, if this is a debate, I'm happy to move the motion that is on the floor, because I think we've debated this. There's been lots of questions asked, a lot of answers given. I think we've debated it full. I think we should continue on with the motion. I accept that it's a debate, but I think we've already had that, in my opinion. Thank you.
Councillor Lynch.
I'm very much in favour of the development for two main reasons. The fact that this is low cost and low cost housing for first time buyers. I think that's very important. And as regards the school places and the village itself, by bringing in new properties and younger people, you are actually bringing younger people into the heart of the village and enhancing the village and bringing young children in, so that they will, because what happens is your population of the village gets older and you have less children, and so you need to bring more people in to keep the heart of the village going and to keep the school and everything going. So I very much welcome this development to keep the village vibrant.
Thank you, Councillor Lynch. Councillor Semple.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, actually, Councillor Lynch pretty much said what I was going to say. I do worry about the school myself, but I take on board what Simon said about they're the statutory body. But I think, you know, it is about you know, housing for our young people, and that's what we should be about. And also, you know, there are a number of concerns here which I know that the officers will look at. So in my view, we're quite safe in making the decision to do that. Thank you.
Okay. I don't see any more hands up for the debate. As I said, personally, I'm conflicted, but recognise the constraints. So can we move on to the vote now, Lindsay? Yes?
Yes, that's fine, Chair.
Okay, Chair, I'll do the vote. Members, just for, against, or abstain against the motion that's on the table. It's been seconded.
Can we just clarify that it's
Yep.
for the granting of the planning permission?
Well, it was as per the recommendation, so it's to delegate to Simon, do you want to come and confirm this just before we go to the vote? Is that okay?
Yes, so the motion that you're voting on, members, is as per the officer recommendation, which is to delegate the granting of planning permission to me upon the completion and signing of the Section 106 agreement, which secures A to E as detailed in the officer's report, and the permission being granted subject to conditions as well, again detailed in the officer's report. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Chair.
Yep.
Okay, so I'll start with yourself.
4.
Councillor Granger.
4.
Councillor Heaslip.
4.
Councillor Horsley.
4.
Councillor Kemp.
Against.
Councillor Lynch.
4.
Councillor Markley.
4.
Councillor Semple.
4.
Councillor Scott.
4.
Councillor Smith.
4.
Councillor Tyson.
Against.
Thank you, Chair. We have 9 in favour, 2 against, no abstentions. The motion is carried.
Thank you. I think we'll have a 10-minute break now. So if we all come back at 14:40, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Members, if you can come back and switch your cameras on, then we'll know when to resume. Thank you.
Simon? It's Alan.
Hi, Councillor Smith.
Yeah. Will you be at work tomorrow morning?
I will be, Councillor Smith, yes.
I think I'll contact you in the morning if that's okay.
Okay.
I'm back in the shop again now, so I'll give you a bell in the morning. That's okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Simon.
Yeah, we're just waiting on one more member. Yeah, we're all back, Chair.
Right, thank you. The next application to be looked at is application FUL/2020/0043 Barncroft, 16 High Seaton. If I could hand you over to Mr. Sharp, the planning officer. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Members may recognise this application. It's been before members before. I realise there's a number of substitutions today. The application was the subject of a member site visit yesterday. That site visit was as a result of the resolution by members in the September meeting of the panel, when the resolution was to defer for a site visit, and also for the impact of a culverted watercourse across the site to be investigated. The existence of that culverted watercourse not being known until the matter was alerted to members by a third party at that September meeting of the panel. It being culverted, it being out of sight, and as the council us not having records of private watercourses. So the site visit was undertaken yesterday. Since the September meeting of the panel, I will go through the slides to refresh members' memories in a second, but since the consideration at panel, none of the layout and the house types have not been amended. So that's as per previous consideration. What has been amended is the surface water drainage proposals. And the reasons for this is that the previous proposal had a combination of water reuse, which is at the top of the surface water drainage hierarchy in policy S29 of the local plan, reflecting the national hierarchy. And also it proposed any excess water to drain to the sewer. With the existence of the watercourse being known, officers requested that the surface water be drained to the watercourse instead, which does actually end up in the sewer, but it goes to the watercourse first, and that is now proposed, and you'll see that in the plan. So surface water will be draining to the watercourse in the first instance, that watercourse being beneath the site and therefore in the applicant's control. I'll go through these slides now, and that will hopefully refresh members' memories, and for those who weren't on panel previously, provide an introduction to the site. So a member seeing the screen, please, if a member could indicate.
Yes,
Yep, thank you. Thank you, Chair. So the application site is in the towards the centre of Seaton, so it's surrounded by residential properties. So there is an existing dwelling on the site, which, as members will have seen yesterday, is in the process of quite a few interventions and extensions to it, and also there's been a garage, detached garage erected towards the front corner of the site. So for members to get their bearings, if I can get the cursor to work, in this direction going north-eastwards is going out towards Broughton Moor, going out towards the village subject of the previous application. Going southwestwards, going towards Seaton Village Centre. So the village centre is it's detailed in the report, but a few hundred metres to the southwest. This is the junction of High Seaton and Fernley Drive. Fernley Drive is a post-war, quite suburban in character development, and the existing access to 16 High Seaton Barncroft is just to the front of the property off Fernley Drive, not High Seaton. And the proposal, which you'll see in a moment, is to form a new access to the rear of Barncroft. So now we're going on, and you'll see it's a full application. So again, as with the previous application, the principle of development is for determination, so the principle of the 3 dwellings. And also the details, so layout, external appearance, scale, the access arrangements, and landscaping. So this is Fernley Drive, this is High Seaton. So off Fernley Drive, there is a tree here, which is a tree subject to a tree preservation order. This is the footprint of the existing dwelling, which is, as I said previously, the subject of a number of interventions and extensions at this current time. Just to make members aware, and I think members need to be aware, but they should not, this is not a material consideration. There are investigations ongoing as to whether those works are being undertaken in accordance with the approved plans. Those inquiries are inconclusive at the moment, but the footprint of the dwelling as plotted here is accurate to how it's been built. So the footprint is not in question, it's more about some of the architectural details. So the footprint as approved and as built is as reflected on this plan, and officers can confirm that. So the access into the existing dwelling is here. The applicant has acquired a small area of the next door neighbour's garden to actually form a new vehicular and pedestrian access to serve the 3 proposed dwellings. Dwelling A, which actually faces away from High Seaton, so it faces this way. So its rear garden would actually, and its main private garden space would be against High Seaton. As you can see, it's quite a depth. As members who attended the site visit yesterday, you would have seen that there is quite a substantial mature hedge on this boundary, which affords a great degree of privacy if you were in this garden area, as members on the site visit would have witnessed yesterday. The ground level has been lowered, and you'll see on this section of the type A dwelling in a moment. And that ground level has been lowered where the footprint of this dwelling will sit. So the dwelling will sit at that lowered ground level, that engineered ground level. So the neighbouring dwelling at number 17 High Seaton, and if members may recall a representation, the owner-occupier of 17 did actually present and address members at the previous panel, and they had concerns about the undermining of their property and also their residential amenity, their privacy. So I did supply members this morning with the separation distance. It was one of the queries from members at the site visit yesterday. So that distance from the gable of dwelling type A, proposed dwelling type A, to number 17 is 4.5 metres, which obviously includes the slither of land on number 17's side. So it's not the distance from dwelling A to the boundary, it's dwelling A to 17's gable end. So, as I say, new dwelling A faces this way, south eastwards, onto the shared private access. It's a 2-storey dwelling, as you'll see in a moment. Dwelling B is a dormer bungalow. And another question asked by members at the site visit yesterday was the depth of proposed dwelling B's rear garden. So I can confirm that the maximum depth of that rear garden is 4 metres, about 13 feet, this distance here. You can see it tapers in, but there is a small area of side garden proposed with dwelling B as well, so it doesn't just rely on the area to the rear of the dwelling. Another question that members asked was the distance between, the separation distance between the extended existing dwelling at Barncroft number 16 and the nearest point of dwelling B, and that's a 9-metre gap. They also actually asked what this separation distance was between dwelling A and Barncroft, and that is a 5-metre gap. So moving on, there's dwelling type C, which sits in the wedge with its rear garden behind here. So it faces this way. Dwelling B faces this way. You'll see from the dwelling types in a moment that the dormers for dwelling B face, or the dormer faces forwards. So there isn't, there are roof lights on the back, but the angle of them and the height of them means there is no overlooking into this rear garden. This rear garden actually serves this dwelling rather than number 17. You can see the boundary there. So if members can memorise that, we'll come on to the survey plan with all the datum points on it. You can see though, this is the green line is actually the line of the watercourse, the culverted watercourse. So you now know where it falls. It just goes by the side, by the corner of an extended number 16 Barncroft. And so the proposal, there's a lot of detail on this plan, but the proposal is basically to tap in with surface water into this culvert, and you can see the pipes feeding into that plan. It goes very close actually to the protected tree, but obviously it's an existing culvert. I'd hazard a guess that the tree is actually feeding off some of the water in that culvert, which would be quite a natural thing to do. So here's dwelling house type A. So we're looking at the front, which obviously is the back of number 17 and the back of number 16, if you remember, it's twisted the other way around. So this is the view from the private access road, not the High Seaton side. So you can see there's the difference in ground levels. Now this area has been excavated, and members who attended that site visit yesterday will have seen that for themselves, that ground has already been engineered and dropped by that level. And you can see the separation distance. What you'll also see is the side the side window treatments to the dwelling. So this is the side here that faces Barncroft, the existing dwelling Barncroft, and this is the side that faces number 17. So this is the gable to number 17, and this is the gable with the garage to number 16 Barncroft. So one of the questions, and you'll hopefully see from the photographs, and one of the observations members had yesterday, was that number 17, this dwelling here, does have windows serving habitable rooms facing the site. Now, if I just drop back to the layout plan, you can see that there is a stagger here, and that one of the main landscape windows on the ground floor, or sorry, forgive me, I'll start again. The patio doors on the side of number 17 are actually towards the front of its property and will face across the gap. There is a landscape window at ground floor, which members on site visit noted, which would directly face against the proposed dwelling A. And so if we go back, it'll be facing towards this area of dwelling A, and you can see it has a small secondary window on that face. Obviously remind members that it would be at liberty for either party to erect a full 2-metre fence on that boundary without requiring planning permission if they chose to do so. Dormer dwelling type B, which is the one, and I'll just go back from memory, is this one. So the front elevation is facing towards here. So this is the front elevation, bottom right. This is the elevation facing into that 4-metre maximum rear garden. You can see 2 small roof lights, but they don't afford a view out of them. You can see a single window on the ground floor and the back door. You can see there's patio doors on the side. If you remember again, they access onto the side garden here. So the patio doors would open out onto the side here. Forgive me, members, for going back and forward, but hopefully it's helpful for you to understand. This is dwelling type C. So this is the access, this is the elevation facing the private access road. This is the gable end. You can see it's a T-shaped dwelling, and this is the other side of that dwelling. So hopefully that will give you that context of the dwellings. So moving on to the slides, members will be familiar with the fact that the site has the levels here. This is 17, by the way, the adjoining dwelling. There are the patio doors just here. This level has now been lowered. Members will be familiar with that from the site visit yesterday. The garden, which will become the rear garden of dwelling A, with high seat and off camera to the left, is at this same height. But there is now a lower level where the actual dwelling type A will sit. And the existing Barncroft, number 16, is just out of camera to the right-hand side. So members will be familiar with the fact that Barncroft has now changed appearance quite significantly since this photograph was taken, if you went on site yesterday. The levels have been excavated here. This is number 17 next door. If you can remember from that section, the new dwelling A will sit at the level of Barncroft rather than the level of number 17. These are the dwellings on Fernley Drive. So dwelling type C will be in the foreground here with its rear garden going towards the point of the wedge. So you can see the context of the bungalows on Fernley Drive. And you remember that it's dormer bungalow proposed with windows looking back towards Barncroft on this area, dwelling type C. So this is another view looking backwards into that wedge. It's not truly apparent from this camera angle, but that this boundary and that boundary are basically aligned towards each other, towards a point at the back of the site here. These are the Fernley Drive dwellings on the right and the Fernley Close dwellings to the rear. So you're looking at basically dwelling C. This is looking towards where dwelling B will be located. We're actually now, you can see the boundary, we're looking from number 3 Fernley Drive, looking back across the site to the site of dwelling C and B. And this is looking at that boundary. Members, you didn't get quite up to this area of the site yesterday, but this gives you a view of what the outlook of those dwellings is like from Fernley Drive from site. So actually, we're actually over the other side on the other neighbouring garden, looking across that wedge of land that will become dwelling C's rear garden. I can go back to the block plan if members want to refresh their memories, but I won't for now. Now you can see that how 16 high seating is evolving. The camera is actually in one of the neighbouring gardens, not actually in the site, but the officer has purposefully done that to show what the relationship is from those neighbouring gardens to the site. So that concludes the slides, members. You would given some of the distances. The only other matter I need to refer members to is condition 5, proposed condition 5, where I've noticed that the reference to the new drainage plan, which is 212-04024 revision 02, which is cited in condition 2, is not cited in condition 5 and needs to be. So I think Councillor Tyson might have shared his screen. Sorry, go back. So that's condition 5 includes the same reference to plan 212-04024 revision 02 received last month, and that's referred to in it's actually in the third bullet point of condition 2, and it needs to be referred to in condition 5 as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Lee, do we have any speakers on this?
Thank you, Chair. We don't have any speakers. However, we do have a letter from the agent, Simon Blacker, which I believe Simon will read out. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Chair. So I'm going to read this as members will understand, and as per practice, I'll read it verbatim. So it goes as thus. Chair and members of the planning panel, we would like to take this opportunity to again comment on the issues raised by the objectors in relation to this planning application. We understand that people have concerns when new development is proposed on land adjacent to existing housing. However, we have worked with the planning officer over a number of months, especially the last couple, to address the neighbour concerns resulting in the amended scheme you have before you recommended for approval. Firstly, the site is within the settlement limit for Seaton, and as such is a location that forms part of the Workington Principal Centre, and therefore the proposed development is compliant with policies S1, S2 and S3 of the Allerdale Local Plan. With regards from the site access from the highway, members will note that the County Council in their capacity of Highways Authority raised no objections, and the proposal is therefore considered compliant with policy S22 of the local plan. As mentioned above, dwellings B and C have been amended during the application process. That was before the September panel. In terms of scale, massing and positioning within the site, the officers are satisfied that the proposals are acceptable in terms of residential amenity to surrounding properties, and as such are in accordance with policy S32 of the local plan. It is noted that the officer is recommending a condition that removes certain permitted development rights to retain an appropriate level of residential amenity, which we accept. The report also notes that the density and plot ratio is appropriate for this location, taking the adjacent housing on Fernley Drive into account. As members will be aware, the application was deferred at the development panel meeting in September until the implications of the watercourse's existence were known, as well as for a site visit to take place. The issue has now been thoroughly addressed and resolved, and in section 6.6 of the officer's report, it states, the Highway Authority and Lead Local Flood Authority has no objection to the proposed development, as it is considered that the proposal does not affect the highway, nor does it increase the flood risk on the site or elsewhere. These conclusions have been reached following the deferral of the application at Allerdale's development panel and the submission of further information from the applicant's agent in respect of the private watercourse on the site. With regards to the only other point raised in the objector's representation, any disruption during the site development, if the application is approved, will be kept to a minimum with awareness and regard for the adjacent properties in relation to working hours, timing of deliveries, etc. We therefore hope that the application will be approved in accordance with the officer's recommendations. Kind regards, Just Street DO Properties. That concludes that address, Chair.
Thank you, Simon. Right, we've got questions from members to the planning officer, and we've got a couple of hands up. First hand up is Councillor Granger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Simon, go back to your slides. The one with the one before, one after the watercourse, please. Carry on. Next slide, please.
Forgive me, councillors, I'm frozen on this screen. What I might do is swap to the PDF. If I can just close this, Councillor Granger, I won't be a second, and then I'll try and share again.
You're all right, lad.
Second time lucky. Let's try again. Can you see my screen, Councillor Granger?
I can, yes, thank you.
Right, let's see if I can tell me when to stop. This is a PDF now rather than the have I gone too far, or do I?
It's about the second or third one before the watercourse. Next one down. Next one. No. Keep going down. To the way. That one. See this area to the front, to the main road, as you go to the end of Fernley Road and turn right. All that area where your cursor is. Is there any?
Here.
No, the other end of the site.
Here.
In that area.
Yes.
Is there any chance in the future of him trying to develop that part of the site?
My response to that question, Councillor Granger, is twofold. First of all, we have recommended on one of the conditions, it's condition, bear with me, condition 7, that permitted development rights are withdrawn.
Yeah.
So they wouldn't, and in any case, development here is unlikely to be allowed and permitted development rights anyway, but we've withdrawn those anyway across the site for all the dwellings. So that deals with development in the curtilage of the dwelling in the future, like summer houses, outbuildings, but extensions in this direction. The second point is, and I think this is what you might be alluding to, Councillor, is if they proposed a new dwelling in this garden area with access off High Seaton. Obviously, all I can say is that's not before you today, and it would require a separate application, and that would be considered on its own merits.
Grant, Simon, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I've got Councillor Semple.
Thanks, Chair. So I was on the site visit yesterday. It was incredibly useful, actually, because I think it's one thing looking at plans and something might be within the statutory measurements, but the reality is certainly it's very, very tight. And Simon, my question, I'm looking at so, I'll be guided by you, the local plan S5 development principles. This is an infill development, isn't it? Infill. So explain to me what it says. Developments must not exacerbate the adverse effects of ribbon development. What is ribbon development, please?
Can you just talk me to where you are on S5, please, Councillor Semple?
Yeah, S5 development principles at the end, where it says development within infill stroke rounding off villages.
Can I just stop you there, Councillor? Those criteria only apply to dwellings in the infill rounding off villages category in the hierarchy in policy S3.
Okay.
So if you look under policy S3, there is the hierarchy of villages, or settlements rather. Seaton is actually in the Workington Principal Centre for Local Plan purposes. So those criteria are not explicitly, they're not cannot be applied to anything other than an infill and rounding off village. That's not to say design criteria in terms of layout is not relevant, because it is. But not from that policy. I think you can refer to other policies such as policy S4, the design principles, rather than referring to S5 when it refers to development within infill and rounding off villages.
Okay,
what is relevant in S5 is criteria A to F. Towards the beginning of that policy, S5, and S4 is relevant, but not the bullet points of at the bottom of S5, and not criteria 1, 2, 3 Roman numerals of S5, because they only refer to infill and rounding off villages, and Seaton is not an infill and rounding off villages, part of Workington for local plan purposes.
Okay. Thanks, Simon. Chair, I'll leave my further comments to the debate part. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lynch, you're next.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was also on the site visit yesterday, and looking at the sort of the plan and looking at it on site, I was a little concerned about the proximity, but I've got the figures now, and that's good. And again, I'll leave the comments on that to debate. What I wanted to ask was, in the other matters section 11.26, because there was a particular objection because of the problems with the neighbours' foundations. So a party wall act that has nothing to do with planning, what would happen there? Because obviously the neighbour is concerned about that, about the foundations of their property being. Would it be up to the neighbour themselves to enter into a party wall agreement, or does that become part of a planning section?
Yeah, it would be something that the parties would need to pursue themselves through their solicitors under the Party Wall Act. It's not something that would be a material planning consideration in this instance, or in any instance. But so that's what I'm saying, is it's covered by other legislation, not the Planning Acts.
You said about the fence, you could build a fence. You said the height. Can you just repeat that, please? What was the height of the fence without planning permission?
In that instance, when it's not adjoining a highway, which it isn't at that location, it's 2 meters, 6'6", from the natural ground level. So when I know Councillor Lynch, you were also on the site visit yesterday. So that is the ground level in effect of number 17's ground level, as opposed to the sunken ground level of where dwelling A is proposed.
And dwelling A, how many bedrooms does each of the dwellings have?
I may need to get back to you on that, Councillor Lynch, so I can pull the plans up. That wasn't on the PowerPoint. I will have the plans available, but I don't have those to hand at the moment, so I might need 2 minutes to look those up.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Horsley, I've got you next.
Thank you, Chair. This one's for Simon. I'm looking through the papers that now, and forgive me if I've missed, but the resident at 17 High Seaton raised concerns that some of her boundary had been removed, and there was legal action on that. So I'm quite concerned at how far is this property? Is it on the property of 16 Barncroft, or are they actually encroaching onto 17 High Seaton? And I can remember saying in the last planning meeting there was legal action pending on this. Can you enlighten us on this, please?
Thank you, Councillor. So, as you will have seen from the PowerPoint presentation, there has been the survey, and we have checked the survey ourselves as officers. So we're not going to get involved in the private matter, the boundary dispute. All we can say is we believe, and our opinion to you is that the plan is accurately plotted, and members who went on the site visit yesterday, you would have seen the bank, where the land had been excavated, and at the top of the bank was the boundary, and that is when you measure the distances from Barncroft, that's where you get the boundary to be, is where that physical boundary is, if that makes sense. So we're satisfied that is accurate, and all the development proposed is on the applicant's site, including, and that distance which I referred to earlier, which 4.5 meters, just under 4 meters of that is within the applicant's boundary, and then just under 1 meter of that is on number 17 side by process of deduction.
Okay.
Does that make sense? But we haven't got involved in the private ownership dispute. What we have resolved to our own officers' satisfaction is that the layout plan shows the true extent of the site under consideration.
Yeah. Another question will be, I think it's already been raised there, is the foundations, of lack of foundations on number 17 High Seaton. me being a local lad and I like my local history and stuff like that, that little cottage, it's on the maps from 300 years ago. So myself, I am a bit concerned the way that bank is dug away, that it's the level below the foundation of what would be a couple of stones that's supporting that house. I have got real concerns at the moment, how much lower that land is than 17 High Seaton. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. My only comment is that no doubt that unless it's been underpinned, and if you remember, I think the occupier of number 17, the owner occupier, was inferring that it hasn't been underpinned. It's incredibly likely, I think, as you say, Councillor, that the foundations to that property will be a couple of courses max, usually just cobbled out to provide a bit of an inverse T of footing to that property, but nowhere near what you'd expect of a modern day strip foundation on a property. And yes, that excavation is close to that property, and something that should be rightly dealt with under the Party Wall Act.
Okay, thank you.
Next is Councillor Heaslett.
Thank you, Chair. I think with Simon Sharp's answers to Councillor Horsley and Councillor Lynch, I've maybe got the answer to my question, but I just want to make absolutely sure that the issue of the excavation, the reduction in the ground levels adjacent to number 17, and the potential undermining of the building at number 17 is not a material planning matter for us to consider, which struck me as a bit bizarre, because, you know, if we were giving planning permission for someone to lower a ground level by so many meters right next to somebody's house, which had the effect of undermining it, one would think that would be, well, a planning matter, but then planning matters have their own definition. I just wonder if Simon would mind just clearing up my understanding of that.
Thank you, Councillor Heaslett. My opinion is that that is a matter that is dealt with by other legislation, and when a matter is not, and when a matter is dealt with by the legislation, as is the case here, it is not for the planning process to intervene into that process when there are other there is other legislation that deals appropriately with it.
Okay, thank you.
So it's just on the back of, I mean, I agree with Councillor Heaslett and Councillor Horsley there. It is a bit concerning. So it's not, for example, a building control issue in any shape or form. It's you'll reiterate again that it's a party wall issue. Yes.
Yeah, it's not a planning matter. And you know what I am saying, just for the record, I'm not saying it's not an issue. All I'm saying, it's not a planning consideration for the purposes of considering this application.
Not for us today.
Yeah, I cannot say that it's not an issue. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. So
and
it's not.
But it's not for us for today.
Not for us to consider at all today. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Simon. I think you've made it very black and white. Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Chair. I always get a bit concerned, Simon, when I see developments like this popping up, and I call them shoehorning them into these areas. Now, I was unlucky; I didn't get to go on the site visit, so I always have issues around loss of amenity, certainly on that area, and overpowered on other people's properties. And I know Cumbria County Council hasn't said anything with regards to the roads. Do we do anything as a refuse collection with regards to access for our vehicles in and out of that area? It is quite a tight little area that to get in and out with refuse collection. Do we do anything around that with regards to looking at planning?
Thank you, Councillor Scott. No, so it's a relevant consideration. So that's a private access road serving or proposed private access road serving the 3 dwellings. So the I know there's a better term for it, but I'm going to call it a bin lorry for the purposes of today's meeting. The bin lorry would not be expected to go onto that private access road. So it would be an expectation that people's wheelie bins would be taken by those occupants to the Fernley Drive entrance. So they would stand in effect on the margin of that private access road, clear of the pavement, and then be collected by the operatives from that location. When we're looking at widths of the private access roads, we do take that into account, that there is an appropriate width there for vehicles to enter and exit, and also for those bins to be temporarily stored there on bin day. I suppose that's all really I can say, Councillor Scott, to that query.
Thanks, Simon.
Thank you. I think as we've got no more questions, I think we'll move on to debate and wait for a recommendation for move a motion. Councillor Semple.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Scott used a phrase that I was about to use. He did say he wasn't on the site visit. I was. Shoehorn is exactly right. S3 and S4, I mean, thanks for the clarification from Simon before. High Seaton is an area of historic importance, isn't it? To me, it's West Cumbrian in character, yeah. And this development is shoehorning properties in to the nearest centimetre they can get away with. If I was in number 17, which, as Councillor Horsley said, is an historic property, I would be really, really concerned. But I did notice as well that yesterday when I was on the site visit, that there are modern properties to the rear of the kind of triangle. So it seems to me that the design principles of this development do not take into account the local historic nature of Seaton, and Councillor Scott, I'm using his word again, it's shoehorning. Thank you.
Forgive me, Chair, before you, I have an answer to Councillor Lynch's question. So I just wanted to come back in before there's more debate. So we've got 2 3-beds, Councillor Lynch, and 1 4-bed. The 4-bed is the A, the one between 16 and 17, and 2 3-beds. So that's 1 4-bed, 2 3-beds. Sorry.
Thank you, Simon. Is that okay, Councillor Lynch? You're not actually next in the question.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Granger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, all the problems with this looks as though it's out of our hands, and it could be a civil attitude. I would like to grant permission due to conditions, Madam Chair.
Just to clarify, that's subject to the slight amendment to planning condition 5.
Yeah.
With the drawing numbers, I believe.
Subject to all conditions.
Yeah. Okay. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Lynch, is your hand up for seconding, or are you wanting to go into debate?
No, I was still wanting to go into debate.
Okay. Councillor Markley.
Happy to second the proposal, Chairman.
Okay. Right. So we have a mover and a seconder. Councillor Lynch, continuing on with the debate. I'm just going to park the motion for now and go into voting once everyone's debated it properly. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at, I was concerned when I went on the site visit that there was possibly not enough room in the property. And asked for measurements and things, and Simon's provided those, which is and they are bigger and provide more of a sort of a garden area and everything than I thought, and the area between the new property A and number 17 is is wider than I thought as well. What I am concerned about there is possibly the because we asked about the windows going onto that side, but that sort of what is about 14-foot distance. How does that affect the light into that property? That's sort of a question for Simon. Is that within the, when you're looking at light into properties, is that within the parameters of what planning would suggest?
So policy S32 is your local plan, or policy S32 of part 1 is your local plan policy there, Councillor Lynch. So it's a relevant material planning consideration, overshadowing, it's part of residential amenity. There are some councils that actually use a BRE, Building Research Establishment calculation, what's called the Yellow Book calculation. Allerdale's policy is not that prescriptive, so it's a subjective judgment. So you've got to think about the orientation of the dwelling. So if I go back, if I can, just go back to the screen. Forgive me, my computer's struggling. I'll just try and get this up because it's what I'll do without sharing is you've got to think of the orientation. So that you've got the patio doors on the gable end of 17, which face, if you like, across the rear garden of the proposed dwelling A, and then you've got that second landscape window, which you'd have seen, Councillor Lynch, on the side. So that faces southwestwards. So if you think about the sun will rise in the east and it will swing around to the southwest and set. I know it sets in a different orientation each day, and we're obviously just on the second shortest day of the year now. But it's fair to say that with the dwelling A in its proposed location, there will be some loss of, there will be some overshadowing of number 17's habitable room served by that landscape window on the ground floor that you would have seen yesterday. So if you think back to our discussions at Broadmoor, there is some impact with policy S32. It's not a complete conflict with policy S32 because there are other areas of the site where, you know, those residential amenity issues are acceptable. So there is a single window in my mind affected by dwelling A. You'll know the separation distance, you know the orientation in terms of sunlight. It's for you to judge councillors to make that judgment as to whether that impact is of a severity that alone or with other concerns that you may have warrants a refusal of planning permission. See the officer's conclusions on that matter. You're entitled as members as long as you explain that to come to a different conclusion.
Thank you.
Next, I've got Councillor Heaslip.
Thank you, Chair. I will happily admit I don't like this development. I don't like it at all for the reasons Councillor Scott and Councillor Semple have said. Also for the reasons about the lowering of the land and the potential undermining and the character of the area and so on. But whether I like it or not is, I regret, not the important issue. The important issue here is, are there grounds within planning law and within the local plan that we have only just adopted, and it's always odd, isn't it, that the local plan always seems to lag a few years behind current thinking, because it was adopted years ago after a process that went on for donkey's years. So our thinking has already moved on beyond the local plan, but the local plan says what the local plan says.
Yeah.
So much as I don't like it, I don't see any rational, lawful grounds for refusing planning permission. Thank you, Chair.
I think there's a few of us feel the same way, Councillor Heaslip. Councillor Horsley.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Councillor Heaslip brought up some very good comments there, yeah. But myself, looking at S32, safeguard amenity, D, it says it all. Have an unacceptable effect on residential amenity and surrounding land uses in terms of loss of privacy and as a result of overlooking or increased sense of enclosure. That says it all to me. Property A in this proposed development does not sit right with me at all. Several members of the development panel have hit the right words, shoehorned in. I don't like it one bit. I really don't. It's not going in with the area. It's not going with the property next door. It's overbearing on the sitting property that's been there for probably 300 years plus. So that's where I sit. And I would like to put a motion forward to reject this on them grounds on S32D. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Horsley. We can only have one motion on the floor at a time. However, the potential for the second motion is noted. Simon, would you like to come back, please?
Yeah, just on Councillor Horsley's, I know it's not a formally tendered motion at this stage, but if and when you do, following consideration of this, Councillor Horsley, absolutely fine and the right thing to do to quote a particular criterion of a particular policy, and obviously D is relevant. I would need just clarification if you were putting this forward as a formal motion as to, as I understand it, you're in effect saying that there'd be an unacceptable effect on residential amenity and surrounding land uses arising from, I didn't know whether it was overlooking or overbearing or the loss of sunlight, daylight, or one of those. And I think it was the impact of A on number 17. But I just need specific clarification, Councillor Halsey. Perfect that you've quoted a particular criterion of a policy. That's the right thing to do. But just I would need to nail that in terms of which aspect of D. Is it the overlooking? Is it the loss of sunlight, daylight? Is it the overbearing, or is it all three or two? So.
You've named a few of them there, Simon. I can go through them there. It's loss of privacy for one. If you've people who had the site visit yesterday know what the open windows are like on number 17. Overlooking. That garden is going to overlook onto that property. Increased sense of enclosure, a building right next to it. Loss of sunlight, daylight received by the property as a result of overshadowing, which is it's definitely going to happen.
Okay, that will obviously, if you're putting that forward as a motion, but that's fine that you've clarified it. I think I just need to clarify that for the benefit of other members of their understanding as things unfold. Thank you, Chair. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Simon. Thank you, Councillor Horsley. Right, I think, do we have any more members debate? No. Simon, have you come back enough on this before we move on to the vote? Did you want to interject, or are you okay?
No, I say you've seen the officer's recommendation. Obviously, when Councillor, if we get to the extent of Councillor Horsley's, if Councillor Horsley subsequently puts forward that motion, the one thing I do ask members to consider is, in effect, what you're saying is that you recognise accordance with some aspects of the local plan. You recognise that it is a sustainable location. You recognise the benefits of the 3 dwellings accrued from the application. But in your weighing exercise, the conflict with D of policy S32 is an overbearing weight against that proposal when you've considered it against the development plan as a whole. And obviously I'd need clarity of that from if Councillor Horsley would be putting that forward as a motion, but that's something to think about, is something for members to consider. Sorry, Chair.
No, that's absolutely fine. Thank you very much. Right, I think we'll move on to the vote now. So this is the motion put forward by Councillor Markley and seconded by Councillor Granger.
Other way around, Chair, I believe.
Okay, sorry, put forward by Councillor Granger and seconded by Councillor Markley, and it's to grant planning permission subject to conditions, and that's with the slight amendment to planning condition 5.
Okay, I'll go through the vote now. Councillor Coburn.
Against.
Councillor Granger.
Councillor Granger 4.
Councillor Heaslip.
Against.
Councillor Horsley.
Against.
Councillor Kemp. Councillor Kemp, you may be on mute.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Lynch.
Against.
Councillor Markley.
For.
Councillor Semple.
Sorry, I've got you against.
Councillor Scott.
Against.
Councillor Smith.
Against.
Councillor Tyson.
Against.
Thank you. Chair, 2 in favour, 9 against. The motion is lost. Thank you.
Why did we bother deferring it?
Right, Lindsay, so next do we move back to debate and consider Councillor Horsley's proposal?
Yes, Chair. Councillor Horsley put forward the motion, but it didn't have a seconder, so you'll need to seek a seconder for that motion. Maybe Councillor Horsley would like to put his...
Yeah, sorry, Lindsay, just so if Councillor Horsley can refresh people's memories and just clarify, with you need specific reference to the policies, Councillor, and the criterion and the cause of the impact, so identifying the dwelling that's causing the impact and the recipient of that impact, so just referring to those for robustness. Thank you.
Thank
and
you,
also
Sam.
And I'm not leading you at all in any way, I just for robustness of decision making, that you have weighed other matters into consideration before coming to the motion that you're going to make. Thank you.
Yeah, if you've got your local plan in front of you, it's on page 132, is S32. So, Councillor Horsley, if you'd like to go over your motion again.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, the motion is, as you've rightly said, it's S32 D. Parts of that are unacceptable effect, loss of privacy, overlooking, increased sense of enclosure as a result of overbearing development, and loss of sunlight stroke daylight received by the property as a result of overshadowing.
Okay, so I think you're identifying the cause of that, if I'm right in saying, and it's for you to answer, please, is dwelling A.
Yes, yes, Simon.
And the impact is on number 17 High Seaton. Is that correct, Councillor?
That's correct, Simon. Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that you consider that there is conflict with policy S32 criterion D, because you consider there's an unacceptable effect on the residential amenity of number 17 High Seaton. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. And because of a loss of privacy as a result of overlooking to that property, and an increased sense of enclosure to that property as a result of the overbearing development of dwelling A. Is that correct, Councillor?
That's correct, Simon. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's also going to be a loss of sunlight, daylight received by number 17 High Seaton as a result of the overshadowing caused by dwelling A. Is that correct, Councillor?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Right, Councillor Semple, are you?
Thanks, Chair. I'd like to second Councillor Horsley's motion there. I'm in complete agreement with everything that's been said there. Because I was on the site visit yesterday, it's only when you go out there and you see for yourself all the things that's been outlined in that motion, I fully support. Thank you. I would second it.
And just before you can, okay, the thirds of proposed and seconded, and what you're, I'm just clarifying, councillors, both Horsley and Semple, that you have weighed all matters into consideration, and you are considering that is an overbearing impact. That impact outweighs everything else in your weighting exercise against the development plan.
Yeah, yes, Simon. I mean, I was referring to a different part of the local plan before. Absolutely, completely right. That there are many things that commend this development, but I think it's that one, a crucially important one that we're saying. But yeah, absolutely, I can confirm, Simon, that I've looked in depth at all of the planning principles.
Okay, I asked that because obviously I will know that the applicant will be watching, as will the third parties. So that's clear. Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification, Simon. Councillor Heaslip.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I did think at first that I had no option, that there were no grounds for refusal, but then having listened to further debate, I think it became apparent to me that actually, taking all the points that have been made about the positive aspects of this development, there's I think a fatal flaw, and that is the impact on number of building A on number 17, and I think that's enough for me to say no, refuse, rethink. Not saying the site is completely unsuitable for the development, not saying it's the wrong kind of development on that site, but the impact of building A on number 17, I think, tips the balance for me into refusal. Not refusal in principle on this site, just refusal for this particular formal, this particular development as it's been formulated. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Heaslip. That's the beauty of debate, isn't it? Councillor Lynch.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thinking about those very good points that Councillor Horsley said, and thinking about being on the site, and again thinking about the distance the house is away and the light and everything else. If that were, if property A were to be changed, say, to something similar to property B and C, then that might be something that would be considered, and it would not have the same problems of the overbearing and the light that property A has.
Yeah, Councillor Lynch, unfortunately, that's not what's in between us, is it?
But it is something that could be considered in the future by the developer.
Well, we're just considering what's in front of us today, but thank you, Councillor Lynch. Right. I think we can go on to the vote now, Lee. And the vote is for refusal for the reasons that Simon has outlined. Would you like to say it again, Simon?
I can repeat it. So it's conflict with policy S32 of the Allerdale Local Plan Part 1 adopted 2014, criterion D, because it is considered that the development will have an unacceptable effect on the residential amenity of number 17 High Seaton as a result of loss of privacy, as a result of overlooking from number dwelling A, an increased sense of enclosure as a result of the overbearing development on number 17 High Seaton from dwelling A, and a loss of sunlight daylight received by number 17 High Seaton as a result of overshadowing from dwelling A.
Thank you. And it was seconded by Councillor Semple. So if we could now move on to the vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just go through all the names. Councillor Coburn.
For.
Councillor Granger.
Against.
Councillor Heaslip.
For.
Councillor Horsley.
For.
Councillor Kemp.
For.
Councillor Lynch.
For.
Councillor Markley.
Abstain.
Councillor Semple.
For.
Councillor Scott.
For.
Councillor Smith.
For.
Councillor Tyson.
For.
Okay, thank you. Chair, you have 9 in favour of that motion, 1 against and 1 abstention. The motion's carried.
Chair, you're on mute, Chair. Forgive me.
Thank you. I had to do it at least once today, didn't I? Okay, for the avoidance of doubt, the planning permission for planning application FUL/2020/0043 Barncroft 16 High Seaton has been refused for the reasons previously outlined by Simon Sharp. Is that enough, Lindsay?
Yeah, as put forward, as resolved by members and put forward by Councillor Horsley, yes.
As put forward, yes, yes. Okay, is that okay, Lindsay and Simon? Yep. Lindsay, I can't hear you.
Yes, that's fine, Chair.
Thank you. I think, is that everything for today?
It is, Chair.
Well, thank you very much, everybody, for turning out this time of year, and I hope you have a fantastic Christmas, all of you. And I said thank you very much again for your participation today, and see you in January.